Evening, Graham. How are we doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yes, all right, thank you. We are settled in and we are live. If those of you who are tuning in live, you'll notice that it is myself, Geraint Davis, and Graham from Dead Ball area. We're going to be your hosts for the next 35 to 40 minutes or so. So if you're viewing live, then there is a chat feature. So if you feel free to drop any thoughts that you have into there, any questions that you have, I will do our best then to answer them during the evening. And then if you're not watching live, then just comment down below. Be more than happy to get back to you. Or if there's any other questions, then you can contact on social media, and we'll mention our handles as we go through as well. So the purpose of the next 35 to 40 minutes or so is to share some of our experiences as coaches and as analysts for a number of years, we'll say. So we're going to go through 10 of our top tips. Now, within each of those 10, there will inevitably be some other bits that you pick up. And we've tried to gear this towards those who are either new to analysis or new to coaching, or those who just want to improve what they're doing and improve their efficiency. So hopefully you'll pick up something that's new. And as I say, any questions, please do drop them in. We will come back to them towards the end. And if we don't come towards your question, then we'll make sure that we do another short video that just enables us to answer your question with a bit more detail. So, Graham, just going to give a bit of insight into yourself and some of your coaching experiences and your analysis experience.
Yeah, of course. So obviously my name's Graham. I run the Dead Ball area. I've been doing analysis that people might be familiar with since about 2013, 2014. Played rugby since I was very, very young and ended up coaching in Belgium and then Paris when I moved there with my regular day job, and started doing analysis off the back of coaching when I was in Paris alongside my colleague, a guy called Brendan McCann. And from there, it just kind of took off a little bit. Started doing analysis for them, started doing analysis for a few federal clubs, ended up doing some work for a couple of top 14 teams by way of being the Dead Ball area. And then that's kind of ended up with me being here, working alongside people like yourself and people like Sam and Simon with the other things we've got going on. And yeah, that's it basically, just kind of self-made. Or self-taught, really, and that's where it's brought me to.
Yeah, great, thank you. And you also got a massive range of experience, and obviously looking forward to sharing that this evening. And indeed, my route into analysis is similar. It's very informal. It's through being a coach first and foremost, also a teacher in my day job. And analysis forms a fairly large part of my life outside of my normal day job. And I think it's a pretty integral part of coaching. So you're definitely listening to people who are very passionate about what we do. And we've got a big belief in it. But we also believe in how simple analysis can be and yet be really, really effective. And that's really what motivated this evening. Just wanted to share some thoughts with you as to how you can make analysis really simple, but of course effective. So I'll just share my screen with you and we will dive into it. Okay, we are there. Okay, let's get into it. So make an analysis simple but effective, which is the important bit, of course. So just before we dive into that, what is analysis and why do we do it? Well, as a concept, analysis is examining what's happening and why. So analysis is not just watching, it's not just reading, it's looking at level below. So you can imagine those rugby games that you watched or any sport that you watched where you are present during the event, and post-event, you actually struggle to remember anything about it. You might remember what the weather was like, or you might remember those you spoke to, but the actual event itself, you don't remember a great deal about. So analysis is that level below that, where we really examine what's going on and indeed why. And those two things, they're quite different in terms of the skill of doing each of those things. Lots of people can recount what happened, given the reasons as to why, of course, is what enables us to change it. Then why do we do it? Well, even the most highly trained can only recall between 30 and 50% of what we observe. So that means that if we only watch something and we didn't really pay any extra quality an analytical mindset to it, or indeed use a video, which we'll cover, then it's likely that you're working on at least half of untrue or slightly misremembered information. And we want to, of course, make it as effective as possible. And that really is our third point. So we can provide better feedback and we can plan, hopefully, on more accurate information. Of course, observations in itself can be inaccurate, and we've discussed it as we go through. But certainly, using the 10 tips that we're going to cover, we hope that you'll be able to provide better feedback and indeed plan more effectively to help your performers, which is the name of the game. Of course, this is really the centre of why we do it. Is to improve performance. So, top tip number 1: you see more when you're focused on what you're looking at. So, Graham, just going to share a little bit of your insight on the importance of having a real focus to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's really important that you have an idea of what you need to look at when you go into a game. Now, and that can be like down the local club, or if you're doing post-match analysis. I think you have to have an idea of what you're going to focus on so that you don't miss those finer details. And that can be, if you think you've got an issue with defence, go in focusing on defence, or go in focusing on attack, or focusing on the opponent's attack. So just make sure that your field of vision is quite narrow. You don't have to take every piece of information out of that game. You need to take what is most relevant to you and your players, and what you're going to be communicating in the following days or straight after the match. So have a focus before you go into doing any kind of analysis would be my first piece of advice.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. So my suggestion is that 2 or 3 things would be probably feasible and realistic to look at. So as an example, you could think about, are we going forwards or first phase? So you can watch your first phase, you can say whether it's good or bad, but really, what are we defining as good or bad? Well, have we gone forwards would be a decent measure of success. And of course, do we maintain possession? Which might be another question that you would ask. Potentially, we can look at the backfield. So something I really enjoy doing is the players are really focused on what they're doing in the game and kind of catch, pass, maintaining possession and so on. So my field of vision then goes into often in the backfield. I'm interested in where their wingers are, where their fullback is, and that will really help me then to guide my feedback to the players and maybe think of where some of the opportunities are, or indeed what their supporter ruck is like. So are we getting turned over? I might want to find out, is that the case? Why is that the case? What's causing it? Is it timing of support, or is it numbers of players? Is it body angles of contact, or is there something else at play? An analysis means that I look at that with a lot more depth than I would to otherwise. So that's analysis tip number 1: be focused on what you're looking for. Number 2: use a notebook. Now, fundamentally, you're simply not going to remember information if you don't record it. Graham, I know you'll want to say a bit more about this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So throughout all of the analysis I've ever done, a pen and paper, if not a notebook, has been absolutely integral. For a few reasons. So one, you can take notes during the game. So if you need to give communication at half time, you've got notes from the first half and you're not winging it. You're not trying to recall what's going on. And it doesn't have to be like all encompassing. It can just be a couple of little points. Then you can just jot down what you thought after the game, your initial thoughts, what your impressions were of the game, and then you can go back to it an hour later, and that helps you go back to it a week later, 2 weeks later, a month, 6 months later, and you start to build patterns up through your notes, start to see things that you may not have seen in the moment because that happens recurring. So it just opens up a bit more. It opens up a bit more analysis to you. You can go long term. You can be far more focused. And you don't have to do it there in the now. You don't have to rely on your memory. It just gives you those little jogs, and you can come back to things a week later and go, oh, actually, that happened last week, and it's just happened again this week. And then you start to see patterns, and you start to see things that you can correct on a more kind of permanent basis. Do you agree, Gavin?
Yeah, definitely. Lots of good points in there. I mean, being able to summarize your thoughts and indeed give yourself some reminders. I mean, I think that's a really important part of it. And indeed, as you say, noticing trends over a period of time. We can be really thoughtful of something in the moment that was really relevant for that game or that training session. But is that a picture across time? And I think it's a really simple but effective tool to use a notebook to be able to gather that information. And it also helps us when we think of those key moments. just before half time, just before the end of the game, we're going to have to provide some feedback. That notebook might be your little way of gathering some of those thoughts together. And as you say, we can reflect and compare over time, and see sometimes have we made developments, or is there a reoccurring theme? Is there something that's come up a number of pages, and clearly that's a focus for training.
Exactly.
So,
and it doesn't have to be sorry, go on. And it doesn't have to be really deep. It can just be trigger points. So you can just write defense, going backwards, or attack not winning the game line, and that's enough to trigger you after the game, just to trigger your memory and say, okay, this is what I was seeing, guys. Did you feel the same thing on the pitch?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it doesn't have to be writing essays. It's the purpose for notebook is it is short and sharp, and straight to the point. Yeah. Point number 3: spread the load. It is not just about you. Sometimes the world can feel on your shoulders as a coach, and definitely as an analyst, you can feel that the time is slowly being sucked away from you. But spread the load. It's a team effort, and in that case, agree focus points with other coaches. If you have other coaches, pick out 1 or 2 things each. You might have a coach that focuses on the line out and is just going to look at, well, what options are we using? What's working for us? Where's the space? You might have another coach who's thinking about the kind of catch pass aspects. How accurate do we be in? Where's the positions of need? Are we too wide? Are we too narrow? And so on. And then indeed, involve the players. It is about the players. So get them involved. And Graham will attest to the importance of substitutes and how much more engaged they are if they've got a role that is related to the development of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. So I coached Jordan Sevens. All of our bench had a role in game, and some of that would have been giving me feedback of things they're seeing. I think it's worth remembering when you come to something like this, to spread the load kind of concept, that nobody knows everything about the game, and there's no way you can. Even as a coach, you cannot know everything about the game, and inevitably there's going to be somebody who has a better field of vision on the specific within the game. So it's your job as a coach and as a coach analyst to make sure you get the relevant information, and that could be drawing it in from other people within the squad. That can be players, other coaches, and not having it all focused around you, because as an individual, you're going to miss things, and you can't possibly know everything that's going on. So use your subs, use your coaches, even use people who just happen to be around. Let them give you your thoughts. You don't have to agree with them, but sometimes people are going to say something to you. You're going to say, actually, yeah, that makes sense, and I'd miss that, because I know personally I missed lots of stuff during games, and it's just inevitable because of the speed of the game.
Absolutely. Many hands make light work. And indeed, I think probably the final point I'll make on this is the word culture is used quite a lot these days. And culture in a team is incredibly important. But what is culture? Culture is a collective, surely working towards a collective aim. And your theming of your session and the theming of your season, those things can be really powerful. Simply getting all players singing off the same hymn sheet and pulling together in the same direction, that's a pretty good marker as to the kind of effectiveness of your culture and of your environment. Is everybody pulling in the same direction? Okay, point number 4: summarize your thoughts. So this kind of leads into that notebook type of concept. Even if you aren't taking notes, sometimes I've stood in film games and I simply can't take any notes. I'm holding a phone in my hand or a video camera in my hand. Definitely summarize your thoughts of those key moments. So just before full time or half time, try and think about the key or most important points, because what you don't want to be doing is taking notes and getting all this wonderful information from a game and talking to lots of people and then chucking all that to the players at half time or a bit at the end of the game. There will be some things that need to be spoken about straight away, and there's some things that are just best left. So summarize your thoughts before you get into too much of the detail, and make it a joint process. What you think is important, particularly in the heat of the moment, is a decent chance that your emotions are playing a bigger part than they should do at that point. So speak to your co-coaches. If you think the referee had made a decision at ruck and you thought it was the worst thing in the world, I'm going to suggest it's probably not the best thing to be chatting about. And sometimes just talking to your players, your co-coaches, can be just that thing that reorients your mind a little, and you start to celebrate some of the good things there. Graham, do you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I'd add to that. So I would say have an idea of what is going to benefit the whole rather than the individuals. So quite a lot of messaging at half time and things like that. It tends to be focused maybe around something that's only going to impact one or two players, might be your key decision makers, might be your scrum half and nine. Make sure the information that you're passing on at half time or whatever is going to benefit everyone and it's going to be relevant to everyone. There's no point in having 15 players or 23 players stood there taking on information that has no relevance to them for the next 40 minutes. If you have key messaging, you can do that aside, or if you've got a second coach, they can talk to those individuals and pass on things. Just make sure that when you're giving information, I always used to do 3 points, whether it was coaching in Paris or whether it was coaching with the sevens teams or whatever. I always had 3 points, but there was always other messaging going on through it. And that just cut down the noise and it kept it really focused. So it might be, guys, our defense is going backwards and not coming forward. So let's just make sure. And that benefited everybody. Whereas I might need to relay some tactical information to whoever's playing halfback for us, or whoever's playing scrum half, or playing the pivot for us in the sevens. So just make sure your messaging goes to the right people. It doesn't have to be broadcast to everyone all the time. Make sure anything that goes to the whole team benefits the whole team, and then the smaller parts benefit those individuals. Because the prop doesn't need to know necessarily whether you're going to be kicking for the corners. He just needs to worry about his job, and then you can compartmentalize without ruining the flow of the kind of team ethic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you. Lots of good detail. Point number 5. It sounds really obvious, but it's also important in my opinion. Be positive about what you're doing, even when things go wrong, because positivity is motivational. And when we think about the things that happen, we, as an analyst, we tend generally to be thinking about the things that are not going so well that we can improve. We're definitely not saying don't ignore them, because those things are pretty important. But we want to think about the whole picture. There's always some good in every single picture. Now, having said that, there'll be some things that are consistent and there'll be some things that are one-off. If lack of effort, potentially, that might well be consistent over a period of time. Clearly, it's going to be harder to be outwardly positive if this is the issue. But if you can find those other things and indeed engage players in the process of it, you're probably going to get more motivated individuals who'll be more wanted to be able to change their behaviour. Graham, do you comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. You can, so we talked about this offline, but you can have a defensive set and you can run 10 positive tackles, people on the deck every time. Then that one missed tackle is going to be, the one that lets the try in. You've just run 10 really positive phases. You've stopped them on the gain line. You've hit really good tackles. It might even be the same person who misses a tackle has just made 3 fantastic tackles, and suddenly the negativity moves to them. And analysis tends to always, I've had this conversation with a lot of people, is it might feel negative, but it's actually about taking positive steps to correct errors or things like that. So don't always just be, that's wrong and that needs to change. It can be, hey, guys, we did 10 really great things here and we just made this one error. Now, if we can cut out that one error, perfect, and it's just how you get that messaging right. It can be a point of improvement delivered in a really positive 10 steps, or however way you need it. But people will be far more receptive to positive feedback with a slight element of criticism rather than criticism with a slight element of positive feedback.
Absolutely, and indeed, the more genuine that feedback is, the better. I think players benefit from that. And that's again partly where relationship and your environment. That's where that becomes important. And actually, you can mix your tone and your positivity and your negativity. You're going to mix that far more effectively when you build trust with those around you, and you build a respect between you, and you actually got a lot more freedom in that kind of environment. But positivity helps build that culture in the first instance. Okay, number 6. Focus on you and your team. Again, sounds really obvious, but we can become so distracted by everything else that's going on. Focusing on the referee, focusing on the weather, focusing on the opposition and what they're doing. The analysis, it's aimed to help you and your team. Definitely learn from others, but don't forget about you. And by that, I mean, we can be watching the way that another team warms up. We can be watching the way they're going up in the line out, and way they're attacking off scrum when we're warming up for a game. You do have to remind yourself that it's you that is really important, and even at the highest levels. So international coaches, they would generally work on a 60-40 ratio, 60% themselves on 40% of the opposition. Now, at the community level of the game, we're probably working on 100% of us. I know in my own coaching, I don't get opposition footage before matches. So in fact, I know very, very little about the opposition. So in that case, really focusing on the way that we are going to play, and then helping players to be able to adapt and to help them feel confident that regardless of what comes up against us, we will adapt and we will alter our tactics based on what we find during the game. But real focus on ourselves. Graham, anything to talk about on that?
No, I totally agree, because especially at the community level, when you could have a different 15 almost week in, week out, you can be playing against a team that's just won by 60 points and be awful the week after, because you never quite know what you're coming up against. So get your own house in order before worrying about everybody else, because you never know what you're going to get, what you're kind of going to get. Even at the elite end of the game, you can do all analysis in the world, but if they've outfought you and they've changed things on the day, it's different. So focus on yourself. The little details about opposition can come along later, but the biggest and best way to improve through analysis is to focus on yourself and your own performance.
Agreed. Number 7, naturally, I put it at lucky number 7, video. Video, in my perspective, is potentially your most powerful co-coach. And by a co-coach, I mean the video can actually do a lot of the coaching for you. Some of those points you want to make, some of those things you want to highlight. If players can see themselves doing something, making a pass, a high catch, engaging into a scrum, kicking a ball, getting up from the floor or not getting up from the floor as quickly as you think that they might, the video itself could be the coach. So incredibly powerful. But with that, you'll see loads more in the film than you will live. So go to those points right from the beginning, that you need to give yourself some focus points, and you give yourself focus points because you can't focus on everything. With video, I could potentially watch the same clip 100 times, and I might well see 100 different things. So it really does enrich my observation, and our memories can lie to us. And this is something I definitely found in my own coaching life, that you think that you've remembered something, you think that you've got a point, and you think it's really relevant. You look at the video and it challenges your thinking, and you realize actually what I thought was the case isn't really the case. And even short pieces are better than nothing. So loads of my filming, I filmed entire seasons with my mobile phone or with an iPad or some kind of tablet. So you don't have to have anything separate necessarily. Actually, some of the quality on it, I would suggest, is better than a lot of video cameras I've come across. So, and it might be just a couple of minutes, but that couple of minutes might be golden. That might be what goes onto your WhatsApp group after the game or the training session. That might stimulate a conversation with a player because you've just looked at them passing for 30 seconds. And that might be a really powerful coaching tool. I know Graham will back me up on the power of video.
Yeah, 100%. So some of the best analysis, as I mentioned to you before, some of the best analysis I've done has been in training sessions, just because I happen to have my phone with me, or a cheap little GoPro or an iPad on a tripod handy. And we might have gone into the training session with an idea of, we need to work on rucks, we need to work on defence, but being able to just say, guys, come and have a look at this, actually, just 2 seconds, have a look at this. What are you seeing? That any kind of visual reference, for me personally, I love things that are visual, and most of the players I've ever worked with there's also an element of liking to watch yourself anyway. Like, people like to see themselves play the game and things like that. But I learn a lot, and we always used to do video sessions with Jordan, and don't get confused into thinking it has to be this incredible telestration that you see on TV. A 10-minute clip from the game can relay everything you need. It doesn't need overlays. It just needs to be watched and discussed, and that's so powerful. It's incredible, and you'll find the players can generally do it for themselves. You don't even need to. You might need to lead them or guide them, but 90% of the time, guys will be able to say, "Oh, actually, I never realised that," and changing their viewpoint as well. When you're down on the ground and you've got that kind of first-person field of view, it's very hard to pick everything up. You move that up to a third person or a high view, and suddenly they see things differently, and it informs them for the next time out. So video has always been fantastic learning tool for me in my coaching, just for me and for the players.
Yeah. Cool, thank you. And we'll definitely pick up some of those points in a minute. I'll lie to that slightly because we link off the video with statistics, and this is a two-sided factor. Of course, the statistics can be incredibly powerful and they can be incredibly useful, but they can also lie to you. So stats like 80% of line notes won, they can be like useful. They can of course lie to you, but they're useful if certain things are in place. So statistics can lie. They can also be incredibly useful, but you got to know what happens next. So we won 80% of our line notes. 8 out of 10 line notes we won. At the end of the game, I say the statistics to the players, but what does it actually mean? What happened next? Did we maintain possession? That's really important. What type of possession did we gain? So if you're going to gather a list of statistics, so scrums won, scrums lost, lineouts won, lineouts lost, tackles made, tackles missed, what does it actually mean? And how does it influence performance? That's incredibly important. Now, if you do take those statistics, you need to be able to compare over a particular match, you compare over time, and that then enables you to be able to take a bit more of a big picture, and 80% actually starts to become a bit more meaningful. Because you might find that some games you're 40, 50%, some games you're 80, 90%. That in itself can be the thing that directs your attention. And because you gather that stat, it could be that you look at something that you wouldn't have looked at either. So stats can be really powerful, but on their own, they can be quite dangerous. Graham, do you want to just top up on that?
Yeah, so I agree. I think stats in isolation, so on maybe a game-by-game basis, can be a bit misleading. Certainly for kind of grassroots levels. I think the real power in stats is having a kind of data set. So if you've got 3, 4, 5 games that you can reference back and see, then you start to see the power in them. But on their own, just saying, hey guys, we made 50 tackles and missed 10, that doesn't tell you anything. Comparison is important, but there has to be context in anything you do statistically. And that can come from the video, or that can come from having like a longer term data set, where you can kind of reference back and say, hey guys, on these 4 games, we had a 80% tackle completion, but on this game we only had a 60% tackle completion, and that's the game we lost by 10 points or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's knowing when to use the stats to make the point and having a bit of context around them. That's key. And that will come with experience. That's not something you'll just get straight off the bat. But compiling them, having an idea of what you need and what you can gather safely is really important. So if it's stats, go for it. But what are those stats going to be? Might be tackles, might be gain line, might be rucks, but have a focus, as we said at the start of this. Make sure you know what it is you're going to gather and why, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, and I suppose to chuck in with that, the type of things that statistically I find really interesting. Obviously, depends whether you're able to measure these kind of things. I want to know what our gain line success is like. So off a first phase, I'd want to know, did we get tackled behind the gain line, on the gain line, past the gain line? And you might well give yourself a score of 0 if you're behind the gain line. You might give 1 if you hit gain line, and 2 if you go beyond, and that can build up over time and give you a real picture. So out of the total number, what was our success like? And you can probably correlate that with some of your later possessions as well. So that type of thing can be quite useful. Number 9. It's not just for match days, and Graham has alluded to this already. So you've got greater influence, I would suggest, on players during training than you have on match day. So in that case, we're missing a huge opportunity if we're not being particularly analytical during our training sessions. And I know Graham has mentioned this already. So using smartphones to film part of your sessions, or tablets in your sessions. And Graham mentioned about sharing it with players. I definitely do that as well. You can send it to players after the training session. I mean, a little WhatsApp message, real simple. You can ask players to share information between themselves. So it might just spawn conversation because you've used either video or you've taken the time to stand back and be particularly analytical. And that in itself, we can forget to do it. If you're going to analyze and work out what's happening and the reason for that happening, you have to be able to watch it and be able to focus on watching it. So being the referee, sometimes it can really reduce your ability to analyze. If you're on your own, hand over to the players if possible, stand back for 2 or 3 minutes. That period of time, just you watching without being distracted, can be really powerful. And that can enable you to share more information. I know we've talked about some of those points already, so I'll go straight on to our final point, number 10. finish with what I think is actually the most important point. Make the players the focus. They should be doing a large amount of the post-session or post-match analysis. And traditionally, an analyst or the coach would be doing all of that. Even at the top level, where fully employed, full-time performance analysts are doing lots of the data gathering, there's players who are being really, really focused with this too. And you'll notice the difference between some of the very, very top players and those who don't maybe quite make it to the top. They're incredibly analytical, and they spend their time with, as they call it in the NFL, with film, and they'll look at it with great detail. Graham, do you want to share some of your experiences with that?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. I think what you have to remember is anyone doing any kind of analysis is learning. And a player that's learning is going to inevitably get better. So if you can get a player to self-analyze or to look at things, and it doesn't have to be, so we discussed this. I'm not a forward. I was a fly half. I played centre. I played 15. I was never I never a prop, never anything. I can't effectively talk about those things. I can do basic coaching, so I need to tap into people's knowledges. So I can say to a prop after the game what was happening, why was this happening, or why was that happening. That doesn't need to be a conversation about other players, but it can be a conversation about how we get better. And that is analysis can be that simple as a conversation is. What was happening? What are your thoughts? How would you change it? What should we do next week? You don't have to do it, but you need to understand what the players are seeing and feeling as much as what you're seeing. And your point about stepping out, it's really important. Stepping back and having that wider field of vision is so important in coaching and in analysis. Just being able to separate yourself from the intensity and the energy around the ball and around what's going on, might be a breakdown or tackle situation or any kind of thing like that. Being able to step out, have that moment of calm around you so that you can just take in what's going on is just so important.
Yeah, totally agree. So things that you can do. You could set the players tasks, ask them for volunteers. So ask them to put themselves forward with things. They tend to be more motivated if they've got the opportunity to put themselves forward. So I might well suggest that post-training session, you might say, I might ask a player to be focused on reflecting and giving some feedback based on our support play. On a match day, I might well suggest post-match that we're going to look at the video. Can I get somebody to go through our line out and just pick out 2 or 3 technical points that we can do, maybe on our movement across the floor or our lift quality. You could potentially theme the weeks. So break up the analysis by not having the same things every week and the same topics all the time. Might well have a theme for a particular week. So you might think about exerting pressure as a theme. So, and you get your players then to look through the video or to think about the games or training. How did we apply pressure? What did we do? What was the outcome of that? So we might suggest, well, we kicked long and we chased. Well, what was our chase like? Where did our phase of play end? Did we actually apply pressure? Did we force errors? And if there was a lot of handling errors from the opposition, you could suggest that you apply pressure. And that might be a really powerful concept for a week and get the players really engaged with that. Lots of imagery, we can use that as well, of course. And given the option, use some form of file sharing. So WhatsApp is wonderful. I mean, just sharing information via WhatsApp that gets people thinking about their performance, or collaboration platforms. As an example would be Coach Logic. There's lots of other ones out there as well. And on those, of course, you can get your video all in one place. You can get your comments all in one place. You can share images and paperwork that you might well otherwise end up in lots of different places. So it can be quite useful to get them all in the same place, which is, I think, pretty powerful. So at this point, I'm going to finish my share, my screen share, and then we'll see if there's any questions popped out. So comments-wise, got a few comments in here. So are there any methods to gather stats pitch side in real time, or will a simple tally chart be enough? There's some very, very good methods, and tends to be the kind of the simpler ones, kind of pitch side. I'm going to share some of his examples in a moment, but tallies are incredibly powerful. The team I coached last season, the backs coach was really, really good at. He would simply, the simple stuff. You tally number of lineouts, you tally the number of scrums, And we could then correlate that across the scrums were put in versus they're put in with errors. So what was the number of kind of handling errors, and then indeed we thought about what was causing those to happen. So were we getting put into the scrum? Why was that happening? And then be thinking, well, have we kicked the ball a number of times? Are they dropping the bottom high catch? And then we think, well, let's do that more. That's clearly working. We're getting good turnover possession. So I find tally charts incredibly useful. I don't take tallies personally, though, and I never have them. I take short chart notes instead of tallies, but that works for me because there's somebody else doing the tally, and the mix of the two is really, really handy. Graham, do you want to share some of your experience there?
Yeah, there's a few things. So tallying is quite an interesting one. When I first started doing analysis, I simply bought myself two clickers and had one in each pocket, one for tackles made, one for tackles missed. And that way, at half time, I had a real-time kind of tally of defence. So it's having that focus. I knew I needed to carry, I knew I needed to collect defensive data. So I just the things you see Dorman using at the club or down the pub, just two of them, it cost me like 50p for each one. And I just stood there, clicked away, and right pocket was tackles made, left pocket was tackles missed. So I could walk on at half time and say, you've made 30 tackles, you missed 2, well done, or whatever. So you can take tallies, it's really easy. Software wise, there's some great solutions. We talked about Rugbycology earlier. There's Statapool. There's a lot of different ways that, there's a lot of things that you can use real time. Rugbycology has a mobile app. I know NAC Sport have Tack and View, which is also a mobile app on iOS that you can gather real time stats. What I would say about it though is make sure that doesn't become your focus in the game. So you still need to be focused on the game, and you need to be focused on what's going on. Don't let the analysis and the statistics take over what you're trying to do. Remember, the focus and the priority is the game. So if you can't gather the stats, don't gather the stats. Don't let that impact your coaching.
Yeah, lots of good points there. I mean, clickers is a quality thing. In my own experience, I've always found that anything like that, kind of counting wise, I can't do it. I mean, I'm not made for that. But there's always somebody at the club. I've never worked at a club where there hasn't been somebody who is really, really good at it, and they really focus on doing it. Sometimes just guys who come every week, come and watch the game every week, and they can be incredibly useful for it. So a really easy way that I've collected stats. This is low tech in the extreme. When filming with my phone, I film. I've just filmed in instances previously. So if I've been really interested in just our set piece possession and the first phase after, I film it in short snippets. So I'll film the scrum itself, and I'll hit stop on my record, and then I'll start recording again. So in an instant, and then post match, I then just go through and I count up. This is low tech in the extreme, but it's incredibly effective. Then count up all my scrums, I put them in order, count up all my lineouts, put them in order. There's my stats done. I didn't have to count any in the motion. I was actually collecting video. It can be incredibly useful. Okay, let's look at another question. So we've got David Hammy. Would you recommend filming the game so you can go back over our mistakes? Filming the game, for me, 100%. I mean, in my view, and I've coached lots without video, and I've coached lots with video. And this is just, I suppose, this is my opinion. It's quite a strong opinion, though. I think that when you coach without video, you are making up the vast majority of what you are saying. And this is that's my opinion based on my experience. So at halftime, at post match, we tend to make our observations based as much as you possibly can on what we've seen. With good note taking, you can make that actually really, really accurate. And with asking players and coaches to kind of triangulate your thought. On the Monday and the Tuesday after, your memory is completely different. So without the video, I think your memory is going to play significant tricks on you, and you will know very, very little about what's happened. So I think that's a pretty strong response, I know, but I think it's incredibly useful. The second bit, go over mistakes. I think I code mistakes. So when I go through a game and I on course logic indeed, and I pick out my points for the game, I do code errors, but I do that for my benefit, not for the players' benefit. Do they even know I do that? Probably not. And it doesn't matter to me whether they know that or not. It matters to me because I want to know over time whether there's consistent errors. So I don't want to talk about a drop catch in a particular game. I want to know, are we dropping catches in that particular situation over a period of time? If that's the case, there might be a training error in there somewhere. This might be something I'm just not covering enough. So I'd have to then react to that. But I wouldn't spend too much time going over the mistakes of players unless I think they're big enough or consistent enough. Graham, do you know what share on that one?
Yeah, I feel quite strongly about this. I don't like flagging up mistakes publicly. So a player knows when they've made a mistake. I would rather use the video to, I think video is really important. I would rather use the video to reinforce positive aspects of the game and then talk to an individual about mistakes, because I think it's very easy when you share a mistake publicly for the focus to be on that mistake and on that person who makes the mistake. There's I've got a really good example here actually of when we were playing sevens in the Asia Pacific Cup. Our opponent made a line break and our sweeper chased him down, made a high tackle and got red carded. And rightly so. In that video analysis afterwards, we got to that point of game and everybody was, oh my God, look what you did. You got yourself sent off on all this stuff. And I had to stop the video session and make the point. He's in that position because we put him in that position. He's made that mistake because we've made that mistake. We've put him in a position to make that mistake. So I think it's really easy for mistakes to be misconstrued. And I think it's far better to focus on the positive elements. And then if somebody needs pointing out, do it individually. Don't put somebody on blast in front of everyone else, because nobody likes it, and it can have hugely damaging impact on people's confidence. So I think I'd rather build somebody's confidence and then have a quiet word than shatter it in front of everybody. Does that make sense?
Good point. Yeah, agreed. I'm on the same page there. And again, your own environment will kind of define the way you work there. So good question. So move to Mark Kinlan. So what video analysis tool do you use to produce the short game clips? I've used a range over time. I started and for a long time just used iMovie. I put together full game footage using just an iPhone, filmed on an iPhone. iMovie on the iPhone and then broken it up on there, or with an iPad or whatever. So I found iMovie really powerful previously. Currently, I use a program called Final Cut Pro 10, which is where I do my main editing. I've also used a lot of Sports Code over the years, which is a software that allows you to break up your footage and we call it code in, where you give it a category, which is an incredible software. And I actually, these days, actually prefer Final Cut. I think it gives me a bit more flexibility. So I've been quite enjoying just my editing software these days. And then Graham, I know you've used a range over time as well.
Yeah, I have. Currently, I use ClipDraw for the annotation kind of stuff, which is part of the NAC Sports suite. You can get it individually standalone. I've used things as simple as Vegas on Windows machines. I would say the best one is the one that you have. Don't worry if you don't have an expensive. I use DaVinci Pro for sort of the YouTube videos and things like that. That's a free video editing software that works on all platforms. So I would say you don't need to spend money. Just anything that lets you clip and tailor video. Doesn't need to be annotated, just clipped, and that's enough. And you can most video editing software allows you to annotate, write something in. That's enough. It doesn't need to be arrows and circles and magnifying and things like that. It's anything that relays the information. So I wouldn't worry too much about what software is out there. I'd just use what is to hand, and it will be just as powerful. There's no benefit. It just looks nicer. It's the messaging that's the important thing.
100%. Totally agree. When it comes to players, I mean, the stuff I put onto social media and I do on YouTube, that for the players is actually sometimes it's unhelpful with players to do that, to be honest, when I'm working with my own players, because I want to be able to have the conversation with them on social media and with stuff on YouTube. That's got annotations on because I'm not having conversations with people. If I was going to talk to somebody and wanted to really get some detail with them, I wouldn't bother annotating. In fact, I would see that as inhibitory. So it depends what you're working with. And then, Glenn Preedy, when videoing the game, would you do it from the side of the pitch or the end, or at height? But my answer is very quick on this one. Side of the pitch, as high as is humanly possible. If I could have a bird's eye view, in fact, I'd be all over it. That would make me a very, very happy man. So I like the end view. If I have to watch a game only from the end, I personally think I miss too much stuff. I know. In fact, one of my good friends is an analyst for a top 14 team, and I know that his massive preference is end of the field, and he'll watch most of the footage. In fact, he'll watch entire games just so at the end on view. That's not as much for me. I'd go side of the pitch as high as is possible. Graham, do you want to add anything? No, all good.
Same.
Cool. And then final question. So Bruce Hitchinson, Mr. Egg-shaped, how much do you involve the players in analysis? That for me has changed quite a bit over time, and is definitely different with different teams. And not every team is the same. Some teams, some boys within the team, or indeed girls, I coach a lot of girls and women's teams as well. They engage on very different levels at different times. So given the choice, the players would be integral to it. And in fact, I've worked with Coach Logic the last year or so, and there's a lot of players who love it and really engage with it, and give tasks out to them. So defensive leaders, attack leaders, guys looking at the scrum, guys looking at the line out. It takes a lot of energy to get these boys to be motivated to do the analysis themselves. It takes a lot of energy in some environments. Some environments I've worked in, when I worked with some very talented young men down in the southwest, those guys, they needed no prompting. They were 100% engaged in the process. They went straight in post-match or in the training sessions, straight into the video. So wholly involved. And given the choice, they would be involved in it kind of every step of the way. But it takes energy in a lot of environments. My current environment takes real energy to push and that's tough over time. Graham, any thoughts on that?
Similar experience, to be honest. There's been clubs where, so when I coached in Paris, the guys played the game, they wanted to go out and have a drink after the game, and they didn't really want to talk rugby again until they came to training. So getting them to do analysis is very difficult. Some key players in the squad, yeah, absolutely, and other coaches. Then with the Jordanian team, we're away at tournaments, we could be away for 2-3 days. So it's far easier to get them in the environment. We could just go to somebody's room, plug a laptop in, review a couple of games or review a couple of opponent games or whatever. So it will vary depending on environment. Of course, the ideal is to get players involved as much as possible and have them learning. But I think you have to set your expectations realistically. And if people aren't receptive, don't beat a dead horse. Just learn as much as you can in that situation. If you get them in, great. If you can't, don't worry too much about it.
Yeah, very true. But it takes time. I mean, I worked at one particular club. The first season, just knocking your head against a brick wall, and he just constantly trying to get boys to engage, and constantly trying to get them to look at film and come back with some points, and really, really hard work. And then got to the end of that season, thinking, well, maybe that didn't go quite so well. Then start off the next pre-season, and all of a sudden, guys are asking where the video is, and asking, because there's no games over pre-season, can we have our training sessions filmed? So it had an effect. It just took real time, and sometimes you got to invest. And then Chris, sorry, Greg.
So it was a similar situation in Paris. So a lot of the guys didn't have much interest, and then we started videoing the games, and we just chuck them on YouTube on a private channel, and they'd watch it. And then when they didn't have it, they say, "Oh, where was that?" And they ended up doing it without kind of knowing. And also things like photographs. Guys love seeing photographs of themselves playing rugby. So vain, it's unbelievable. And I'm a photographer, so I started doing a lot of analysis by just taking photographs and then saying to the other coaches, "Oh, look at this ruck, this photograph of the ruck I took. Look at the body angles and things like that." And people ended up doing small chunks of analysis without realizing they were doing small chunks of analysis. Now, that's not quite the same thing as kind of sitting down and having a full analysis session, but those little things can benefit. That's all I would say.
Yeah. No, totally agree. Totally agree. Some I take loads of screenshots. I absolutely love them. When I watch games, I take screenshots, and then the beauty on some computers is that when you screenshot it and it becomes the screenshot file, you can then annotate on top the free software that comes with your computer. You can annotate on top. I mean, I spend more time on that than is healthy, but I think it's so powerful, and you end up with a little picture, and you can send it off to your players. It's pretty cool. Will the PDF be available for the top 10 lifts? Chris Vaughan, you're definitely in luck. I have a PDF image ready to go for you, which will potentially be up this evening. I've got a video which will hopefully be live in the next hour or so on YouTube, which is looking at a classic try, one of the finest tries ever scored, Graham's favourite try as well. Scott Gibbs, 1999. I've taken a trip into the past and have asked the question of would this happen today? So would Scott Gibbs have tried, scored in 1999, Wales versus England at Wembley, last ever Five Nations game, Wales win 32-31. What an event. Remember like it was yesterday. Would that happen today under the modern defences? Like a bit of comparison with the recent games, and then a little bit of fun, just to consider. Would a try like that, which stands out as one of the finest of all time for a Welshman at least, and Scotsman of course, would that be scored today? Which hopefully you'll see again on the YouTube channel. So, Graham, do you just give your just anybody watching, just let them know where they can find you?
Yeah. So you can catch me on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at the Dead Ball Area. Probably most active on Twitter, arguing with anyone and everyone, and trying not to. But yeah, you can generally catch me on any of those platforms. But Twitter's the one I'm most active on. You'll catch me and Geraint discussing rugby from early till late.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, generally quite late. And then I'm Davis GDD. If you want to catch me on Twitter, of course, my Facebook page is being regularly updated with content as well. And then YouTube channel again, Davis GDD or GDD Coaching over on YouTube. And then I have also got a Patreon site which I'll chuck in the link, and that's designed basically to help coaches. So it's there to share coaching resources, and I was fortunate to do a level 4 coaching qualification a couple of years ago and share lots of the learning I had from that and other things. So thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Have a very pleasant evening. Any other questions, please do let us know. Drop a mention down in the comments, and we'll be sure to get back to you.
Cheers, everyone.